You might not know it, but I'm spinning the bottom of my office chair as we speak. Do you hear anything?
There's a little click every once in a while.
That's the floor creaking. The wheels
No, I hear nothing.
Are absolutely silent.
Ooh.
Rollerblade wheels, dude.
Oh, you got rollerblade wheels?
I did it finally after, I don't know why I did it. Why was I staring at them on Amazon for like a year?
I did it ages ago. They're I mean, like, look, there's a weird thing that took me some getting used to where like they have a little bit more inertia on turns.
Oh my God.
But like, other than that, pretty good.
Like I can push off and glide most of the way across this room. I mean, I'm on hardwood to be fair, not
so like,
carpet.
be careful of the pigs. They're right behind you.
I really have to be careful about the momentum of this chair now. It's a weird, unnatural, like buttery feeling as you glide around on this thing.
Yeah. No marks either, which is really nice.
Well, man, that's not the real story here.
What happened? What's going on, Brad? Lay it on me.
To further contextualize, I put rollerblade wheels on this now 18-year-old office chair.
Jesus Christ, Brad, why do you have an 18-year-old office chair? Isn't that thing blown out and like wrecked?
I mean, it's actually like shockingly still in pretty good shape.
This is a situation like when you know how you buy a new mattress and you're like, oh man, my old mattress was a turd sandwich. What have I done?
So as long as you just don't buy the new thing, you'll never know the difference.
Oh God, you're the thing is you're stealing from future Brad with this unergonomic, uncomfortable office chair.
Especially the amount of time I'm sitting in this thing day to day these days. But anyway, whatever the design is, you know how like the install process is you like literally by hand just pull the old wheels and casters out.
Yep.
And shove the new ones in.
Yep.
It's like a 5-minute install, right? The whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like shockingly easy.
Yeah, I had to lean my chair down on the floor and I yanked them out and I put the new ones in and I was good to go.
Shockingly easy, unless say you've got dried up 18-year-old grease in the wheel wells of your chair. I got 4 of the 5 popped right out.
Oh no.
The 5th one, the plastic wheel, you know what a standard office chair wheel, like the plastic wheel is on like a metal post and that's what.
Yeah, it's a hard steel post with a little flange on the top.
Kind of plugs into the base of the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the whole aperture coming out as one piece, the plastic wheel came off of the metal post and then it was just the metal post stuck in there.
Oh boy.
Oh my God.
Do you have a set of vice grips or anything?
I do not.
Vice grips would have fixed that problem in like 2 seconds. Or made it much worse.
I should probably go buy some vice grips after this experience. Like I generally like we have a little basic toolbox. It's got some pliers and a wrench and some screwdrivers, and that's generally living in an apartment. I hear a word like vice grips, and I'm just like, that probably doesn't belong here. Although I should
channel locks and vice grips both really useful. It turns out
those probably could sit in an apartment closet just fine, right?
I mean, they're small. Like the danger with vice grips is and always has been that if you use them improperly, you can round out any bolt and destroy almost any piece of equipment in like 30 seconds flat.
Wow. Okay, that's fun to know.
Yeah. So
okay,
like my dad always, when he had people coming over to work on the place, he would always take the vice grips out of the tractor toolbox before somebody else would use the tractor.
Nice, just in case.
Well, it had happened. Like one of the guys that he used to have bush hog hay came in and rounded out a bolt on the PTO for the. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But
avoid any wanton use of vice grips. So
don't hit him with a sledgehammer. It turns out.
Oh my God, man! A 5-minute install process turned into like a 2-hour odyssey.
Is this why we didn't record last night?
That's why we didn't record last night, because I didn't have a chair to sit in.
Wow.
I went in the Maker channel on the Discord asking for suggestions and posted a picture of what had happened. And of course, they recommended vice grips straight off. I don't have any vice grips. But they started saying like, well, can you weld something to it and something? Like, I can't no welding going on in this apartment. Even in the communal garage, I don't think there's any facility for welding.
Yeah, it would be
you know what that little post looks like? I mean, there's nothing to grip on. It's like it is jammed in there and there is nothing to grip. Oh my God. It took a pair of pliers.
Yeah.
WD-40, a hairdryer.
What did you use the hairdryer for? To swell it up?
A medical tourniquet and 2 people to get that thing out. The hairdryer was to kind of expand. They recommended applying some heat.
Okay.
Because it would make things expand.
The grease looser too.
Probably. Well, the grease that was in there was just completely dry and tacky and not going anywhere. But they said that it would make the metal expand a little bit.
Wow.
Dude, holy shit.
Is this a situation where like you and your partner are on either end of this thing? One of you is holding the chair leg and the other one is pulling back as hard as you can while squeezing the pliers?
I had to have her almost like sit on the chair or like hold it down while I pulled with all of my might on these.
She's not large.
Wrapped the tourniquet around the posts to give the flyers something to grip onto.
Okay.
Heated the thing, like worked the WD-40 down, rotated it a lot to kind of work it down in there, and then just pulled with all of my might. And when it finally came out, it sprayed a mixture of WD-40 and that old grease across the room and all the way up my arm. It was just everywhere.
What did the pigs think about this?
Oh my God. They were pretty chill through the whole thing, you know? Like it was a net gain for them because this thing's so quiet now. They don't even hear me roll around anymore.
That's true.
Their quality of life is only going up. But
and they always they got to look at everything that happens in that room as weird human stuff and just be like, what the hell, man?
Let's not get into that.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Guess what, Will?
What, Brad?
Time to rank.
What?
Time has come.
Dude, I showered today. I'm not rank.
Well, you're going to get rank.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get the list filth all over you here.
Okay, so this is I would call this a medium concept episode.
Okay, that's
right. It's not high concept. It's not low concept.
That's a little humbling considering I thought of it, but okay, I'll take it.
I think this is good. I think this is a good place to be with your concepting.
Okay.
And what's the pitch? What's the topic?
Well, first of all, I would just I'd like to point out we have now passed the federally mandated statute of limitations on podcast ranking episodes since the last one.
It's been more than a year.
The Windows, has it been?
Wait, are you establishing that we can only do one ranking a year? Because that's not enough. We need to do more rankings.
I think it's a fuzzy requirement. I don't think we should rank too often.
Okay.
Take it from me. Yeah. As someone who has spent a good part of the last decade ranking things, you don't want to get into it too often.
See, I'm always skittish about suggesting ranking things because I feel like you're a little gun shy after. Like there's a period of time after Game of the Year that I feel like it's not appropriate to ask you to consider ranking things.
I'm always down to rank. I think the bigger concern is that, well, it depends on whether you believe there's any such thing as bad engagement. Because there's nothing that will engage your audience like ranking things, but what they think of it might not necessarily be positive. You know what I mean?
Look, once upon a time, we devoted 2 features in the magazine to the greatest PC technologies of all time. It was a list of either 100 or 200 things, and we spent literally 3 days locked in a conference room talking about it with a whiteboard covered with sticky notes.
Yeah, that's the process.
That each had one technology on them. Okay. And we moved them back and forth until we had a ranking that made literally every person at the magazine angry except for me.
That's the end goal.
Yeah. So
nobody should leave happy.
USB was the winner.
Especially the audience.
USB was the winner, Brad.
Is engagement the same as publicity? There's no such thing as a bad version.
Look, we got more email about that than any cover that didn't feature a woman on it.
Even if it's hate mail, at least people are listening to your stuff.
So what are we ranking today? What's the pitch?
The vague idea was, hey, building PCs in the late 90s sure was a pain in the ass.
So you wanted an excuse to be like, you kids have it so easy these days?
No, it was more, I was thinking more of a positive, like, look how far we've come kind of angle. However you want to interpret this.
Yeah, I see what's happening here.
Look how much better things are today. Anyway, I was thinking like there's so much stuff that has evolved over the years in the realm of building, configuring, kind of servicing, administrating PCs. And I really appreciate that a lot of that stuff has happened because boy, did some of that stuff suck.
It's a lot easier now than it was, though. Yes. Like for real, like you can mess things up still pretty badly, but for the most part, it just kind of goes together and you put the screws in and like they've smoothed off the places that you can destroy hardware.
That's what it is. Like there's just so much less friction, it's not like most of the stuff we're going to be talking about here was impossible back in the day. It's just so much more convenient now,
Yeah, agreed.
It's like yes, I could have had a stack of floppy disks there as boot disks next to the monitor. Or
I did for a long time.
Right. Like you just don't have to do that stuff anymore. Like there's a lot that has gotten better. So anyway,
okay.
I don't know. So we thought we'd just make a list of stuff and rank. Let's come up with the definitive ranking of what do we call this? Improvements in PC building technology.
We have 29 items on the short list.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes. I think.
What do we want to cut this down to? We want to get to 10?
10 sounds good.
Okay.
A ranked list of 10. That sounds like a good idea.
I'm going to let you do the typing since my keyboard's loud.
Okay. I do enjoy a quiet keyboard.
Yeah. Look, the only downside of the mechanical. All right.
Yeah. Let's just read off this list. I imagine some of these are going to be consolidated. Some of them will be removed or merged right off the bat. We'll kind of refine the list before we start ranking the list. But here's what we jotted down from memory. Modular power supplies.
Okay.
USB.
Best technology of all time, according to Maximum PC Magazine.
I hear they're an authority. Moving away from DVI.
It's an interesting one.
I think I would go back to DVI at this point.
It's not fast enough.
That's true. Being able to plug your PC into your TV.
Those are kind of related, it turns out.
Yes. SATA. Flat panels. Smooth edges on cases / aluminum cases. Thumb screws. PCIe, PCI Express. I don't know, like UEFI. What would you characterize UEFI as? Is that like a system? It's the BIOS replacement. Yes, I know that it replaces the BIOS, but what is that category of thing? Like system controller? Is that what you would call that? I guess
BIOS replacement is what I would call it. I mean, it's weird to define it by the thing it replaced, but that's what it is.
But I never thought about like what is a BIOS because it was always just the BIOS. Like it's the basic input output system. So like
it's the interface between the hardware and the operating system.
Right. So whatever a BIOS is, UEFI is the thing that kind of replaced that.
It's the glue that sticks the operating system to the motherboard.
Right. Although I still feel like people call it a BIOS, sort of. Like you're not entering.
Everybody still calls it a BIOS. Yeah.
Right. So what I wrote here is UEFI. And also, that's really hard acronym to say fast. Can you?
UEFI?
Wi-Fi? No, that's a different.
No, don't say Wi-Fi. People think you're a furry and you get all sorts of other problems there.
Wi-Fi?
Let's just stick with UEFI.
UEFI. It just kind of comes out all gooey. I wrote UEFI / boot shell, if you know what I'm talking about. There is a UEFI. See, I still can't get it out. There is a UEFI shell that you can boot into. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah, the thing that you can use to like it basically lets you set like the master boot record and all that, like the equivalent of the master boot record if you so desire.
Or you can like flash hardware from there and stuff like that. It's kind of like a DOS shell without DOS, like it boots straight out of the BIOS. So
and it lets you manage the low level stuff of the UEFI. I've never actually used that. It's never come up for me.
I've had to use it a couple times. It's interesting but confusing. Well, we'll get into it. Number 11 after that, kind of related. The modern BIOS is what we ended up calling this. In parentheses, support for input devices, network, backing up firmware, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think we've both at different times in our lives had to pull a BIOS chip off of a board and replace it with another one that was working.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that means you never have to do that anymore, which is nice.
Yes. After that, bootable USB operating system installers.
Oh, okay. So this is where we should talk about the time, like the scope of this category, which is from the time you start putting the computer together until like Windows and drivers are installed, right?
Yes, sure. I'm sorry, I have to digress. When you said category for a second, a cold chill ran down my spine. Because that implies there will also be other categories.
Well, Brad, what do you mean next week we're going to talk about biggest failures?
What do you mean we're doing this for a week straight?
Misses.
Yeah. Yes. What you said. That is the general kind of scope of this thing. Let's see. Next, cheap overnight shipping. Tiny cases / tiny computers. USB power as universal. Man, there's some interesting stuff I didn't think of in here. Having a phone with a web browser and flashlight. Front panel connector.
Okay.
Connectors, sorry. Wireless stuff that works? ? Troubleshooting features that are directly on the motherboard. Holes in cases for wire routing and accessing.
Hold on. Troubleshooting features that are directly in the motherboard are things like
I
like diagnostic lights and little screens
exactly,
and stuff like that.
Exactly. Okay. I figured I would expand on that when we got there, but yes, exactly. Although that one I feel like that one came and went for me. Like I don't have as much of that stuff as I used to. Holes in cases for wire routing and accessing the back of the CPU mount and water cooling, etc. Water cooling, chonky air cooling. Fan speed control hardware, glass doors on cases with fancy lights, Windows Update installing basic drivers.
Hold on. Glass doors on cases with fan. No, it doesn't work. Never mind. Nope. Sorry.
Yep. Nice. Good effort. I appreciate it. Is that, well, I'll read the rest of the list before I ask questions about stuff. Auto updating driver installers. Not having to activate Windows to install it. I really took that for granted until you wrote that down. Consolidation of external cards and hardware onto the motherboard, like Ethernet, Wi-Fi, sound, and graphics. Headlamps. Still got to get one of those. Decline of the pizza box form factor. That's a sad one. I would cut that right off the bat. That makes me sad.
Look, my first two computers were pizza box cases. I had an AST Pentium 60 and a Wang 386.
Let me distinguish here. Are we talking is any desktop format considered pizza box for you, or does it have to be thin like a pizza box as well?
It has to be flat. Well, so those weren't thin; they were probably 5 inches thick.
Right. So I'm thinking the kind of the Packard Bell compact era of big, thick, fat desktop.
Like for me, it's if you put your monitor on top of the case. And remember, we're not talking about flat panels back then. We're talking about a 40-pound CRT probably.
Yes.
So like, A, the cases were difficult to work in. And B, having the fact that you put your monitor on top of it made it even more difficult to work in. So you had to like lift the monitor off, find some place to put it
on the floor.
And then you had to disconnect everything. Usually you had to move the monitor before you could disconnect it because you couldn't reach around behind there to get to it. And then you had to take it apart. And those cases sucked so bad to work in.
It was already the era of shitty cases, but those were even worse because of the form factor. I mean, how reinforced were those cases that you were putting big, thick CRTs on top of those things?
Well, it's funny you say that, Brad. It's usually because they had a steel bar that went across the top middle of the case that made it even more inconvenient to get into the places. So you had to open the case and then you'd have to take that bar out. And then there was usually some sort of shroud around the rest of it that was like an EM shroud, although sometimes that was built into the top of the case. And it was like swapping a video card or a sound card or something like that out was usually like a 15-minute process. It was
hairy.
A lot.
It was hairy. Yeah. Should I? Well, this is kind of restating the same thing. Should I change this to tower cases in general?
I mean, I guess that's the positive way to put this.
Sure.
The rise of the tower case.
But the thing I want to say
maybe it's build friendly cases.
Yeah, okay.
That kind of rolls into like smooth edges on aluminum cases and stuff like that, though.
There's some other items on here that would all roll up into that. The one thing I want to say about pizza box is like when you say pizza box, I think of the actually only like kind of 2-3 inches high type. Like
those also were bad.
Oh, I got a soft spot for like my university had computer labs full of Sun Spark stations that are just these thin little like they're almost just like thin client kind of dummy like dumb terminal type things that like you just. They were all running Solaris and you just sat down and logged into your shell account and then all your stuff came up off the network. And
they were just dumb terminals. They were external boxes.
Yeah. Best I can tell, they were sort of penny. Well, they wouldn't have been Intel at that point, would they?
No, they would have been Sun. They would be their own CPUs.
Sun was making their own stuff, but they were like, 166 megahertz chips at that time. And they were pretty weak, pretty underpowered. And you just brought all your stuff up off the network. I got a soft spot for that 90s era, like, kind of Silicon Valley workstation.
How many times did you open one of those up, Brad?
0.
Yep, that's why you like them.
Okay, fine. I just like the way they look. I think that, but I just generally think the idea of the thin client dumb terminal is kind of cool in general.
Look, we're back there, man. What do you think cloud computing is?
That's right. Just got to fill your house, just a computer in every room because it's all actually just one computer.
Should we go down this list and pull out the things we think are absolute keepers? Or should we get rid of the ones that we think are absolute losers first?
Speaking from experience, I say that you mark the keepers later in the process. You don't want to, because as soon as you do that, everything else is just automatically discarded, and then there's a lot less to talk about.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to change.
I think change that to like
change
build
it to
friendly
tower
cases or something. Tower
/build friendly cases.
Yeah. Okay. But I think that's toward the bottom, probably. I don't know if that hangs.
If that hang, well, man, towers. The first tower I ever saw was pretty.
Towers.
Oh, you know what? I shouldn't even say that. Our first family computer was a tower. That's
okay.
We got our first computer late enough that it was a tower, so maybe that doesn't hang for me actually. Let's see. I think there's a bunch on here that could all roll up, like water cooling, but thick air coolers, but also fan speed control hardware. Like those are all kind of a piece on a list that's going to have a pretty limited number of items. I don't know that like a bunch of different case items are all going to make it.
We're looking for 10, by the way, right?
Sure. Yes.
I think I could bundle all of the case enhancements up into one thing. Yeah. Like if you never built a PC in a case before they started rounding the edges out on the die stamped metal.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You couldn't. Look, when I started Maximum PC, we were still getting those cases in, and all of the OEMs were still shipping, like Compaq and HP and all those people were still shipping machines with that stuff. And when you had to open one of those up, you would get a bazillion tiny cuts all over your hands every single time.
It was almost impossible, not quite impossible, but damn close to work in one of those things and not cut yourself somehow. Yeah. Like I would in that era, I would routinely open my computer up later and just see little red spots on the metal here and there. It's like, oh, well, I guess that's where I cut myself last time.
I think when we did one of those builds at Tested, even I think I cut myself. Oh no, it was when I did a PC building race at CES a couple of years.
Oh wow!
And I cut myself and was just pouring blood into the case the whole fucking
it's not
time.
Your case unless you're taking it home with you.
No, we went to some elementary school someplace.
Oh no, God, that's terrible.
They cleaned it out. They said they were going to clean it out. But the camera people loved it because I was like in the far away in the lead and was bleeding all over the place.
That's drama. It was high drama. This guy's not even going to let these injuries stop him. What era was that? Like what type of computers are we talking? Or like
probably like 2008. It was Tiger Direct did it, so it was using their cheap cases.
That's relatively recent, but they were still bad. Those cases were still bad then.
The thing is, if you buy a $15 case, it's still going to be like that now.
Oh, sure.
Like you can buy a really cheap case that's going to have all the same problems that 90s cases had. Yes. But if you spend $100 on a Cooler Master or a Leon Lee or whatever, pick your favorite like boutique builder brand, you'll get a better case.
Yeah, I'm partial to Fractal these days.
Fractal's great. I mean, maybe this category is builder like enthusiast friendly cases.
I think I think like the way you put like build friendly cases is probably the most succinct way to put it.
Yeah, but that also includes like thumb screws and the holes in the back of the case, smooth and all edges, that stuff.
Smooth edges on. Yes. So should I just take those off? Those are inclusive.
Yeah, just nest them under there. We have a nested list. You can tab that in.
Big shout out to Thumbscrews though.
And I'm back and forth on Thumbscrews because they're usually milled aluminum, which means my magnetic screwdriver doesn't work on them.
Huh.
And sometimes it's better to have a steel screw that is ferrous and that you can stick on the end of a screwdriver and jam in there. I mean, that's why like your motherboard screws aren't magnetic. I mean, aren't aluminum thumb screws usually.
Well, let me ask a related question. Is it definitely safe to be waving a magnetic screwdriver around in there? Okay.
100%, especially now. Like, okay. How many platter discs do you have?
So that's my real question. Am I just like extrapolating my paranoia about magnets and hard drives out to all computer stuff?
Yep. It may have mattered in that may have mattered in the 80s. It doesn't early 90s. It doesn't definitely we exclusively used magnetic screwdrivers at Maximum PC for years. Never once had a problem.
Okay. All right.
Gordon tested it at some point. I don't remember. I'm sure the outcome was the same because we kept using them, but yeah.
The one place I absolutely cannot live without thumb screws is just straight up on the back of the case. Like, just being able to get into your case without having to find a screwdriver is so huge.
Back of the case, I kind of feel like some of the cards, like the especially empty slots.
Yes,
I don't really like it on the video card when you have a 2-slot video card because that middle hole that's usually I only do one of the screws on the 2-slot video card. I do the middle one, and that one's hard to hit with the thumb screw often for whatever reason because you have to kind of squeeze. You got to get two hands in there.
Yes, that's true. Why do you not do both?
Because you don't need to.
But two is better than one though.
But like, what's gonna like? Are you putting your PC on a paint shaker or something? What are you doing with that thing, man?
What's that?
Trust me, it'll be fine. You can run the video card just dangling. It won't hurt it.
I mean, you're talking to somebody who is probably going to set up a second pie hole this weekend. It's redundancy for the first one.
Your fall over pie hole.
Yes. High availability. That's the name of the game.
Okay. So build-friendly cases, and we'll roll up Thumbscrews, smooth edges. You beat me.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else on here that would
holes in cases for wire routing / accessing the back of the CPU mount.
That's pretty good. My Fractal, what is it? Define R6, I think is the one I've got. Like it's got most of the routing for also like the CPU and motherboard power, like all the power that plugs straight into the motherboard. Trying to think, like there are SSD mounts behind the motherboard. There's a lot of cable routing for like SATA cables and stuff. I'm trying to think what else, like a shocking amount lives behind the motherboard now. Remember, like back in the day, there wasn't even really a lot of provision for taking that other panel off the side, the one behind the board. Because
usually you only did that to put a hard drive in or an optical drive.
Right. Like you almost never took that second panel off.
And like the thing that was weird about that was you didn't have, if you wanted to do something like change the CPU cooler, you usually had to take the motherboard out for if it had a backplate that was screwed in from the back.
Yes.
So having those holes in the bottom is incredibly useful and saves you so much time.
That is a great design innovation. It is just barely counterbalanced by the accursed power supply shroud, which I feel like is.
Look, we're talking about worse stuff today. That's a different episode.
I have developed a real strong dislike of the power supply shroud recently.
It's funny. I've been using the same. I have like 3 of the same Cooler Master case from 10 years ago now. They don't make them anymore. I'm a little sad because like now I have USB. I think I have USB 3 ports, but I don't have any USB-C ports on the front. And at some point I'll have to replace them. But I started down that path last year and I was like, no, I like these. These are good. They're nondescript.
Yeah. I like that in a case. I like it to look like a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to mention, let me digress for a second. I have got to give a shout out to Seasonic on this podcast. And
okay.
I promise none of this stuff is paid. Like this is just passion for well-made products that are sold by people that seem to care about their customers. I've got it's probably a 7-year-old power supply at this point.
Yeah.
Long discontinued model. Like they don't even list it. I think it's like there's still a listing buried on their site for like support legacy reasons or whatever, but like they haven't made this power supply in a very long time. I got that 3080. They were offering like a custom 12 pin, for the new NVIDIA power connector. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't even in the drop-down list on their website of supported models. Like they wanted you to send like proof of purchase and serial number and all this stuff off of your power supply. And they would send you the 12 pin cable. Yeah. Like I just wrote their support. I was like, hey, I've got this very old model. Also, I don't have any proof of purchase anymore. Is there any way I can get in on this? And they were like, yeah, just drop the photo of the serial number on the power supply in and fill out the form. It'll be fine.
Wow, that's awesome.
And a month later, straight from Taiwan, shipped internationally for free, a proper, because, the 3080s come with an adapter. So you have to like kind of have this big gangly.
Yeah, but I have like a dangling thing that's weird looking up there.
Yeah, it's like just kind of a case mess to use that adapter that it comes with. It works. But anyway, this is just a 12 pin that plugs straight into your power supply.
That's awesome.
Like not even really a supported product anymore, long out of warranty, and still like internationally shipped me this cable for free. That was like,
that's rad.
Like, that is like lifelong customer retention stuff. Like I could not believe that they did that. That was so cool.
That's fabulous.
Anyway, okay. Sorry to ramble.
Let's talk about modular power supplies. I think modular power supplies is high on this list. When they started making them, people were very skeptical, and then they've. Oh yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know
because like there was word that there was concern that adding connectors on both ends of the cable and not having it soldered directly in was going to add signal noise, which was going to cause problems with overclocking and stuff like that.
So this is why I love having you come from that magazine background, because you know what kind of quote unquote people were saying when these things came out.
What the vibe was, yeah.
Right. Like I just like saw them show up on Newegg. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll buy one of those. Sure.
Look, the other thing you have to remember about, especially that era of the PC enthusiast community, was that it was a bunch of old guys who were all skeptical of any fucking change at all.
Of course.
So like when a new motherboard port would come out, they were like, oh, this PCI Express thing is nowhere near as good as AGP. And then like 3 months later, everybody's using PCI Express because it was the right thing to do.
Of course.
But I think modular PSUs like just not having to have the extra wires that you don't need.
It cuts down so much on the miss.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good.
Just stop putting them in shrouds so it can actually work in them.
I mean, How often do you work on your PSU though?
I am just extra salty because I've added so much to my PC over the last year for work because my PC is now my work machine basically.
Yeah.
So like I bet I've had that PC open and had to plug something into that power supply like 4 times in the last year. And every time it gets worse. So anyway, modular PSUs is like probably a lock for the top 10.
I'm going to move build friendly cases up toward the top 2. I think let's put that at number 2 right now. And we can put stuff between that and power supplies if we need to.
Bold.
What do you want to do? USB?
So
I think I want to make my case here. Hold on.
Okay, well, the thing I said before we started was I feel like that one's overly broad and we need to say what about USB we would be including, but you said you had an argument. So
I think having a universal connector for external components and power is incredibly useful.
You're right.
I think being able to plug everything from, say, a bootable thumb drive to a flash card reader to a light to shine inside my PC into the same port on the computer and having like 10 of those versus one of each of a bunch of bazillion different weirdo ones like parallel and serial is powerful, useful, and very good. I've made this argument before in case you didn't know.
How about a little desk fan?
Yeah, a little desk fan's great. I have one of those.
A little desk fan. It's nice.
Yeah. Used to be at conferences, you got stuff like that all the time. I had one with a mister on it too, which seemed like a bad idea.
I think originally I had written like USB replacing serial and parallel ports.
Yeah, but it's so much more than that, isn't it?
I guess it is, yeah.
I mean, at this point, you can get a PCI Express level connection to your computer through a USB port, through an external port.
Sure.
That's the same form factor as we've been using for 20 years. Yes. That's amazing. That's magic.
It does a lot. I'm just kind of looking at it from the historical context. Also, I think I am conflating plug and play with USB in my head, even though plug and play is kind of more of an operating system thing than a hardware thing.
Yeah, that's a different. Like they're two sides of the same technology idea, but
right. But in my mind, like thinking back, like anytime you plug something into a serial or a parallel port, then the other shoe would drop and you would have to configure it.
Yeah, which was way worse. Is this?
Right, like that's the part. That's the part that is so much more convenient to me is that like you just plug the thing in the USB and go. That's it.
Yeah, I'm just saying USB is real good.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, what if it had been reversible from day one?
Look, could you make Michelangelo's David better? Yeah, sure, probably.
Dude, you've got strong feelings about USB.
I think USB is fucking awesome.
I don't know if I'm willing to follow you all the way there.
Look, I spent a lot of time, like I have a space orb that plugged into a serial port, and getting that thing to work on a new computer was always a pain in the ass.
I believe it.
External modems, all of that stuff. There was
Yeah, I mean, USB obviously is probably going to be a strong contender here. You put moving away from DVI, which given the problems I've had with DisplayPort in the last few months, I feel like is the wrong direction because I get the arguments. DVI is too slow. It doesn't support modern, high resolution, high refresh combos, but
that's not my argument. My argument is that the physical DVI connector is bad.
That's not great. I mean, it's just a kind of like slightly more modern VGA, D-sub, whatever you want to call it.
Nope, it's bad. It's got like 90 pins. Bad about it? If one of them gets out of alignment, even in the slightest, you can't use the cable anymore.
Just bend it back. What could go wrong?
I'm also sometimes they lock on, and when you pull it, the shroud comes off.
Yes,
and you end up with just the stump in the port.
Yes, I've seen that.
It's like it was. Hey, let's take the VGA cable and make it digital, which was good, I guess. I don't know, maybe not. And then let's also make it incredibly prone to failure and fiddly. And also, we're going to have 4 different versions of it. Yes,
you're right. Actually, the what is it, DVI-I and DVI-D, I think?
DVI-I was both analog and digital in the same cable. DVI-A was analog only and DVI-D was digital only. In reality, I don't think there ever were very many DVI-A cables. But then there was also the dual link one, which had twice as many pins to break, but could go for resolutions up to like 2560 by 1600 or something like that.
Yes.
It's a bad spec. Like the good thing about it was it wasn't encrypted. It doesn't have any of the two-way communication bullshit that the modern HDMI and DVI DisplayPort have. Like
that's the stuff I'm getting at that I kind of miss about it is that it was just a dumb connector. Like,
yeah,
you've got like DisplayPort. So maybe moving away from DVI was good, even though some of the standards we ended up moving to are also not great. Like that's a separate topic is what I mean. Because
Yeah.
Like DisplayPort's got like hot plug issues and like different kind of sync issues, and there are like cheap cables on the market that are not configured properly in terms of the pins that are connected, and there can be massive problems there with having a bad cable. Like all kinds of bad, like quote unquote smart features.
Also, the locking thing on DisplayPort is
it's
stupid.
terrible.
Yeah.
I just had to replace a $20 DisplayPort 1.4 cable because the locking mechanism broke on it. It's bad. DisplayPort sucks, man. I hate it.
You know what I like though?
I hate that
HDMI is great.
Yeah, like I can't wait for HDMI 2.1 to just be on all video cards and monitors, and we can just forget DisplayPort ever existed.
I mean, that rollout hasn't been super smooth either, though. The number of people I see asking questions about, hey, why does my Xbox not work with HDR and high frame rates on my fancy ass TV? Is very high.
It's the curse of backwards compatible cable standards.
Yeah, but on the other hand, being able to plug your PC into your TV so you can tell if it's your monitor that's broken or the computer that's broken, really useful.
Actually, I would almost replace the DVI thing with the standardization of HDMI. God, this is a wordy item. Yeah, maybe we can condense it. But like standardizing HDMI as a connector across monitors, graphics cards, TVs, everything. Like like you said, like letting a TV be a PC monitor is insane.
Well,
because back in the day, like you said, if something happened to anything in the chain between your graphics card and your monitor, like you were kind of screwed because you couldn't hook it up to anything else, right? But now, you can, like you said, you can just plug your PC into your TV, and that's crazy.
Well, so can we go one layer deeper here and think about like the first time I built a computer was 1994, I think, maybe 1995, and I only had the one computer, and I had bought everything but a new hard drive because I just replaced the hard drive in my old computer. So I kept the old computer on to look up the instructions on how to build the computer in Tom's Hardware to supplement my Boot magazine, how to build a computer copy. And when I got to the point that I had to pop the hard drive into the new computer, I had to turn off the old computer and disconnect it, and thus ended my connection to the internet until the new computer was up and running. Yeah. So like having a phone that you can go look stuff up on and download PDFs and whatever, and search forums for troubleshooting advice when stuff doesn't work, even if it's your only computer that's still running, incredibly useful. Like being able, there's an ecosystem of devices that makes building computers easier now that's outside of the scope of the computer you're actually building. And that's the TV fits into that. The phone fits into that. The fact that probably you have a laptop around your house, the kid has an iPad or something. Like kind of
internet connected to everything, I would say. Because like I had the same experience in the late 90s downloading Slackware, which is one of the very early Linux distros. Yeah. On putting it on floppy disk and installing it from floppy disk on my only computer.
Yep. I mean, when you fucked that up, you had to reinstall Windows, right?
I had modem-based internet access, but when you install Linux on your only computer and nothing works except you're sitting at a bash prompt with no idea what to do, like all you can do is format the hard drive again and go back to Windows because there's no laptop you can pull out and look up, hey, how do I use Linux? So like, I don't know what we would call that. That got really broad because I think... You're right. DVI sucks, but I think there are better ways to phrase this. Like, I think the HDMI thing into TV is really good, but I also think the thing you said about like kind of having resources for sort of building and using the computer that exist outside the computer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to put that.
Maybe just put it stuff like not in the computer, right? It's like everything but the computer.
Okay.
Well, because like being able to lay on the floor and look at the motherboard postcode on the little motherboard screen and be like, okay, I'm getting CF here. What is this one? And go to the ASUS website and look up what the CF postcode means while I'm on the floor instead of having to go like phone my friend who's like, hey man, can you look up on the internet what this postcode means? Because I don't know what this one does. It's not in the manual, and like I don't know what's wrong. And then it turns out it's just one stick of memories kind of half hanging out of the slot.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
I do. It does occur to me as we were making this list. This is how you end up with things on your list where somebody who's just looking at the list for the first time is like, "What the hell does that mean?" Or "Where did that come from?"
We'll have to write a magazine article that goes with this.
Yeah, everything.
I'll put it on my Substack.
Let's see. I'm gonna say, where is it? Kind of related to what you're talking about. I put this on here: troubleshooting features that are directly on the motherboard.
I love that. My motherboard has that stuff still.
I love it, but my last like at least two boards have not really had any of it, and so I kind of want to take it off here because I don't think it's universal enough.
It's a high end feature. It's not a low end. It's like an overclocker board feature is what you're seeing.
Maybe that's another development I don't love. Another trend in PCs that I don't love is the sort of broadening of the motherboard price range.
Balkanization of the. I don't know if that's what balkanization means, but I think it is.
Kind of. That kind of works. Like, like back in the day, like it was hard to buy a $200 motherboard. Like
you had to buy like something from Taiwan for servers or something to get to $200.
Like you needed like a dual CPU socket board or something to get that high. Like motherboards were just like 100, 115, maybe $150 tops. And that
like
was
that's something fancy.
That was kind of it. And there are like easily $600-$700 motherboards out there now. Like, not that you need them
not for normal, even enthusiast boards cap out at like $350 or $400 now.
But even that, even enthusiast boards at $400 is like kind of crazy compared to.
Let me suggest something to you. Those motherboards have consolidated a lot of different devices now. So they have, for example, a network card, which was $100, and a sound card, which was $100, and a graphics output from the CPU, which was, $150. So, you're getting a little bit more for your buck.
But the cheap motherboards also have all that stuff too these days.
Okay, that's fair. But the nice motherboard does a better job with the audio routing, so you don't get signal noise if you use the analog output, which nobody does. So it doesn't matter.
That's the thing that is kind of making me come around on the more expensive motherboards a little bit, is like people who know saying like, yes, these use better voltage regulators. The components on this board are higher quality. So like stability, longevity, like you said, sort of signal, noise, crosstalk stuff is going to be cut down.
Like Brad, my motherboard has a special port. I don't know if it does anything, but it's a special port for audio interfaces that provides level voltage regulation. And I was hoping that was going to solve my Focusrite issues, but it didn't. So, but it's yellow. So I got that going for me.
Focusrite is too ornery for a single port.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's ridiculous that you can spend $400 on a motherboard, but I also feel like, they're building those for people who, it's like cars, right? Like you can buy a Ford Focus, right? And it'll get you to and from work and it's fine. But if you care about cars and you want to have something that goes fast, you can buy a, Tesla Model S, or you can buy a Corvette or a Ferrari. And for the people that are doing the overclocking, it's awesome that those models exist with the crazy voltage regulators and all the onboard diagnostics and stuff. For most people who buy those boards, they just want the cool light controller and like the shit that comes with it. It's not, they're not using the overclocking stuff.
Yes. You have made me realize I've got a Gigabyte Ultra Durable is the line that it's from, which is their kind of like middle of the road, just like 120 to 150 range, like whatever. Yeah. It's held up for 5 years. It's fine, but you've made me realize that it's basically an economy car.
Yeah.
Like
there's nothing wrong with your station wagon, dude.
This is basically the economy coupe or something, the economy sedan that I've got. It's not
you're a minivan guy. It's fine, Brad. Nobody's judging you.
This motherboard may not have power windows is what I'm saying, and power locks. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the stuff I was talking about being on the board, I had a DFI board about 15 years ago that had a bunch of diagnostic LEDs on it. It had power and reset switches on the board. So you didn't even have to like run the case leads when you were testing stuff. Like it had all the things you would need to test and configure it without actually hooking it up to a case. It was so cool. And
my board has all of that stuff.
Okay. So, I mean,
listen, Brad, sometimes they even put them on the back on the connector panel, on the ATX connector panel.
Wow. Holy shit. Wow, man.
Yeah. Think about it. Well, it's just right there.
Glad
so
to hear
when you're plugging in a USB something, you can accidentally hit that button and turn off the computer, surprisingly.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, that part, maybe they don't do that as much anymore, I guess.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear that stuff is still around, but it not being on every board is kind of a bummer. So maybe I would take that off of here.
Look, you got to product differentiate somehow.
That's true. I'll leave it for now.
How about we've cut like 3 things so far where this is going to be
this is bad.
Okay.
Well, I think so. There's like 8 things on here that pertain to cases. All right. There is water cooling. There's chonky air coolers.
Well, that's cooling. That's not cases.
Fan speed control hardware. I'm thinking things that are not electronics, like things that are not like the things doing compute.
Okay. Like I got to roll up here for you with those 3 things right now.
Okay.
Quiet.
Sure. Okay.
Because all those things work together to make your computer quieter.
Dude. Okay. Now you were creating an item after my own heart.
And that's some business. Like my goal with my computers is always that I want to take the headphones off.
And not hear anything. Yes.
Don't hear it.
Did we get old? Is that something that happens when you get old?
Most people don't give a shit about that because you wear headphones, you can't hear anything.
Because I used to not care about that. At some point, I just realized at one point, like I would rather not hear my computer than get an extra 300 megahertz out of it.
Yeah. I would like my computer to not crash very much. And I would like to not hear it at all.
Yeah,
and
like
those are my two goals.
Stability and noise totally became my priority at some point when it used to just be speed.
It's because you use your computer for work instead of just playing games now.
Yeah, that's part of it for sure. I just need it to work at all times.
But I guess what I'm saying is once playing games on your computer became a thing that you do that's important for your work life.
Yes,
I can't. My capacity for fuckery went way down. Like I can't.
I can't even afford to have a game crashing and not know if it's the game or my overclock, because then I might go say, hey, this game's not stable. And that's not like, I can't editorialize about something that I'm not that confident in.
Yeah. Like at this point on my computer, I'm pretty confident if game's crashing, it's probably the game's fault. And it's unlikely that it's, or cosmic radiation, right?
Yeah, like that's always a danger.
The one-off.
Don't play games on Mars.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
do you think they're going to have to bury their computers deep in the Martian tundra?
They're going to have to bury everything deep in the Martian tundra. Anybody that lives on Mars is very likely going to be living underground.
How will Elon Musk mine his Ethereum?
I don't really care. He can do whatever he wants.
Perfect. That's the right answer.
As long as he doesn't come back. Quiet operation is what I wrote.
That's there. Good. That should be up toward the top.
That's okay. All right, sure.
I'm just saying, let's start shooping stuff up. So we're down to 25 things.
I'm ready to shoop.
I'm willing to give up. I think we should get troubleshooting features directly on the motherboard. I think that can roll up into modern BIOSes. Maybe. Yeah. I think that's a. But I don't know. Yeah.
I think this is an easy one. Can we remove headlamps? I think headlamps are awesome, but it's not. It's in the context of this list. It is not as PC specific as most of the other stuff on here. So I just
building the computer real easy.
You're right.
See everything you're working on.
That's true.
I haven't built a PC without a headlamp on in about 10 years.
Man, I still need to buy one of those. All right, I'll leave it for now.
I'll get you one for Christmas next year. How about that?
I think front panel connectors on cases are cool, but I'm gonna like something I have. Wait, why are you put it on here? Why are you thumbs downing it?
I wanted to thumbs down it. I think that they
wait, hang on. Are you just going to say your piece about it and then we can cut it? Is that what we're?
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Great. Go ahead.
The audio connectors are always noisy, and also nobody uses analog audio connectors anymore, really.
Yes. So it's actually not just the audio connectors are noisy. I've found that the USB ports are very unreliable.
That's the phase 2 of that was USB 2 was pretty okay. USB 3 is way noisy depending on which cables you have.
I've had situations where I plug like a big USB flash stick into a USB 3 port on the front.
Yep.
And copy a bunch of stuff and just have the copy fail at random times over and over and over. Like it's terrible.
I use my front USB ports for gamepads and charging shit and nothing else. So
that sounds about right. I'll plug a crappy webcam in there if it's not important, if it's just a casual call or whatever.
Like I'd much rather nano. Look, you know what you need is you need one of these little dongles that has like a micro USB on one end and a USB on the other. It's just a port that I nano tape onto my desk. It's just one port.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you use that as like the thing that you need to plug and unplug. So like my webcam gets plugged into that because I only use my webcam for Zoom calls and talking to you.
That's smart.
And then I unplug it when I'm not using it. If I need to plug in my YubiKey to authenticate, I drop that in there and boom, I'm authenticated.
Right. I should probably do that. Front panel connectors should go, I think.
I think like I'd much rather have a case that I don't have access to than front panel connectors that are good.
Do you think front panel USB-C ports are going to suffer from the same limitations?
I don't have any idea.
Okay. I don't either. But my, because you mentioned your old cases not having USB-C. Mine has a modular IO panel that you can actually buy a new one from Fractal that has USB-C on it. And I thought about it, but then I was like, these USB 3 ports are already terrible. If USB-C is also going to be just as bad, there's no reason to buy this. My
guess is that because of the like tightness of that USB-C spec, if you're using it at 3.1 or higher speeds, is you're going to have problems with front mounted. You're going to be better off using like your VR headset says to plug in the USB-C port into the back, not into the front.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to buy that panel then.
Yeah.
Okay, cut that one.
I think USB power is outside the scope of this, maybe.
Sure. Oh, you're talking USB power for objects away from the PC, just like everything can be powered off USB now.
Everything's powered off USB is nice, but like
I think that's a kind of a different category. Let me ask why you put a question mark after wireless stuff that works. What are we talking about here?
I was thinking about like keyboards and mice and stuff like that.
Okay. I'm using a Bluetooth keyboard right now that I've been fairly impressed with, actually.
Okay.
Like,
is this the Apple keyboard that you've been using for 15 years?
Oh, that was a wireless. This is a different Apple keyboard that's also Bluetooth.
Okay.
It's a newer one.
I feel like this is a peripheral that it doesn't matter if it's wired or wireless, essentially.
Okay.
Like once you get set up and going, and also using, like, it is nice to be able to use Bluetooth keyboards in your BIOS now, assuming you have the right kind of Bluetooth dongle built into your motherboard or the right kind of Bluetooth dongle.
Oh, I didn't even consider that you could do that. That's fairly impressive.
But yeah, I think that's outside the scope of this, probably that kind of wireless stuff.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Okay. I've cut that. I was thinking about cutting tiny cases / tiny computers. I think that stuff's awesome, but I have never engaged in it, so I can't speak from experience.
Oh, I love like the rise of micro ITX.
Yes, this is that the form factor, micro ITX, not
micro
mini?
ITX.
Okay,
it's like a little square board.
It's the shoebox computer.
Yeah, one PCI Express slot. Usually there's like an M2 slot or two, 2 sticks of memory and a CPU socket.
Only
and that's
two?
pretty much
No kidding.
it.
Wow, I guess you're right. I guess you've really got to cut corners. There's like a surprising number of people on our Discord who are like super into the tiny computer. So we see a lot of good examples of people building them, and like they're fascinating and really impressive. But like the Tetris process of getting all that stuff to fit in there seems like it could be real thorny.
Well, so the people that make cases that are good. So Fractal makes some good micro ITX cases. There's also a lot of weird kind of behind the scenes nonsense about ITX, mini ITX, micro ITX cases. Maybe it's mini ITX. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the small form factor ITX form factor. And there's a lot of weirdness about like people posting pictures and acting like they're going to sell cases that actually are never going to exist as a way to make other people make cases that are competitive, as a way to apply pressure to your competitors. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of like small Kickstarter runs and stuff like that in those spaces too. Oh yeah. I can absolutely see that type of tiny case following the mechanical keyboard community of like, we're doing a group buy on this case. We're going to get like, fan mounts for 500 people or whatever. Well, there's a community is the right way to put it. There's people who are really into that. I like it. It doesn't work for me because I'm always going to need at least another card or two in my computer for capture stuff. Yes. But like I can appreciate it. I can look at it and be like, that is freaking cool, man. Totally. As like a secondary computer, as a workstation or a dumb terminal, let's say, a thin client. It would be very cool. You can put there are cases that you can put a full ass 3090 in. Oh, right? I know you can do that. Yeah. I'm just saying like you, I need a full size computer with a lot of expansion potential for work stuff. Yeah. Well, but what I mean is like once you spec out and build one of these computers, that's it. Like you're not going to cram another drive in there or something like that's probably not. You're pretty much maxing that thing out from the get go, which is cool. But then even smaller than those are the things that you can't really build, like the bricks and all that, the Intel nukes and those type PCs that are like super small SoC. They're not system on a chips, but they're system on a board. Yeah. And they're all in. They're basically laptops without a screen or a battery. Have you seen, speaking of that, some people in the Discord were talking about the Lenovo Think Center the other day. Have you seen this thing? Is this the thing that mounts on the Visa mount with your monitor? Oh, it's a full computer. It's a little fanless. The thing that caught my eye is it's a fanless Core i3. It's not it's not like an Atom or even a Pentium or Celeron, any of the like lower powered Intel chips. Yeah. It's a straight up like mobile i3 in there. And it's like it's not much bigger than a router with a giant heatsink on the top of it. Like it seems like it would be pretty powerful for like $200. So the fanless is the interesting thing there. Like Asus and Acer and Dell and all of those companies have been making computers that are that same kind of size, that are designed to hang off of like a Visa mount with your they hook into the Visa mount. I didn't look at. I don't see the bottom of it here necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're right that it does actually mount on the back of a monitor. Well, yeah, so you use those. They use those in like hospitals and stuff like that. Places where you have like like if you think about a hospital room now, where there's a computer in every room and it's got one of those weird vertical pole mounts that they can fold a keyboard and stuff down.
Yes,
that's where those end up. I think they're not for people like us necessarily.
Well, so this was being talked about in the network channel because this is a dual gigabit Ethernet one.
Oh, yes,
it would make a very good PF-Sense box. Was the idea?
Oh, West Fenland sent me a link to that the other day. That's only $200, really.
The one I believe that's right. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Interesting. A lot of good stuff happening. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. Do we want to put tiny computers on here?
No, I think we can cut it.
Okay. I agree.
I'm not going to say I've said my piece.
We have to cut glass doors and fancy lights. I'm sorry.
What? I love that.
Dude, really?
You can get a whole box. You can get a whole, instead of a door with a hole in it that has a piece of glass, and you can just get a door that's all glass now. That's amazing. They're smoked. They're gorgeous. You can see that's just like a hint of your fancy lighting scheme inside.
I'm not a fan. I don't know, man.
Look, man, you want to be a big Twitch streamer, Brad. You got to get your fancy lights and take down that Star Wars Revenge of the Sith movie poster and
never
put your big PC back there.
Never,
you big Hayden Christensen stan.
That's right.
You can cut it. It's fine. Okay. I think having the option of doing the fancy lights is awesome. The fact that stuff is built into the motherboards and there's an ecosystem around it is cool. And the fact that you can buy addressable RGB light strips for nothing now and put them in your case and make it do all sorts of really insanely stupid lighting stuff is awesome.
I think, on some level, it's cool that stuff exists. Like there are a lot of good ideas being.
Old Grandpa Brad hates the sparklies.
It is not to my taste.
Oh, it's there's kids and their ground effects on their PC. You don't need that.
To paraphrase my grandpappy.
Oh boy,
PCs should be used and not seen. Is that picking up what I'm putting down? I like the technology to be out of the way. Yeah.
Okay. But how will people know how fast my computer is if they can't see the cool lights?
Yeah. I kind of get where you're going with cheap overnight shipping, but I feel like it is sort of outside the bounds of this. Like, yes, it is very nice if you need a cable or a part, a card, you name it, a new heatsink or whatever, like to get it the next day or sometimes even the same day if you're lucky is pretty nice.
Do you remember the UPS strike in 1995?
Not really.
The UPS drivers felt like they were being mistreated, probably rightly so, and they went on strike and stopped delivering packages for 14 or 15 days. I had received every single component for my new computer except for the case, which was still on a UPS truck about 4 miles from my house. The strike was called. I waited for another 2 weeks to get that case, looking at my K6200 and my new video card and all this stuff.
Just a case? You could have just built it on a cardboard box.
Look, it was the first time I ever built a computer. I was not building on a cardboard box. That was scary.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's the type of thing after you build 3 or 4 and you're like, anything goes, whatever.
Yeah, but like, remember the time you bought the wrong RAM and you're like, oh man, I bought the RAM for the wrong motherboard. I got to get the new stuff. And then you got to wait another 2 weeks for it to come.
Yeah, yes, it sucks. But
remember the time your computer broke and you're like, oh God, I'm not gonna have a computer for the next 10 days. That's terrible. The fact that you can just call somebody and they'll send it to you and it'll be there next day for an extra like $10 is amazing, but you can cut it. It's fine.
As an end user, I get it. I think that, there's a certain human cost associated with that convenience that needs to be addressed before we can really.
It's true.
Feel good about that.
But now with fries gone, we don't have a whole lot of alternatives. We got to lean into the overnight shipping.
Yeah.
I think flat panels are really good.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I don't know that they're in this list.
Yeah, being a little nitpicky, I feel like that, that's just something you plug into your computer. It's not necessarily a part of building and making it work.
I feel like you're taking a shot at USB now, but okay.
No, not.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I can get behind killing flat panels.
The other thing is obviously nobody's building CRTs anymore. Like the use case for flat panels is obvious, but there are so many trade-offs. Like there are still so many things about flat panels that are not as good as CRTs.
I wish I'd kept my 24-inch Trinitron.
Dude, yeah.
It was widescreen. It was awesome. My God. It was a $1,200 monitor.
Wow. Wait, like retail $1,200?
Retail $1,200.
Jeez, that's intense.
Yeah.
Did you see, God, I can never remember the model number of this thing. you see a couple weeks ago one of those Sony widescreen? I think it's the Carmack monitor, like the widescreen Sony from way back in the day, CRT.
Sold for TV?
No, it's a monitor. It's a Sony GDM. I believe this is it. Damn it.
Is it the broadcast monitor? Like the Sony
GDM FW900. It's the one that Digital Foundry did a video about a few months ago or a year ago and like kind of created a run on them. It's a 1440p CRT.
Okay.
Like that's why it's so special. It is a huge CRT that literally does 1440p.
Yeah, so dude, this is the monitor that I had.
You had one of these?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I had one. So we bought one to test video cards because we needed something that could do as high resolution as possible at maximum PC. And then when the 2560 by 1600 panels came out, they were going to chuck it. And I was like, oh, I'll take that.
Man.
It was 23 inches. It weighed like 100 pounds. It was so fucking heavy.
Oh, I get it. Yes. The downsides are obvious, but it's a CRT that can play. They sell periodically. This one was new in box. This one had never been opened. Brand new, sitting in a warehouse or whatever for the last 20 years. Sold for over $35,000.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yes.
It took two people to move it. It didn't have handles.
Oh boy.
It was because it was a flat CRT. The front side was about most of the weight was in the 3 inches on the screen side.
Sure.
So it was really hard to move.
I mean, there's a reason that CRTs went away, but they sure do look good. And they're just, still a lot of ways that flat panel, that LCD especially, is just not up to snuff.
So I didn't have this. I had the other version of this model, the one that had the buttons underneath the front panel, not on the little dangler. But yeah, it's the same basic monitor, 24 inches, widescreen, 1440p.
Man, we're kind of getting down to some.
It's about to get real, Brad.
Tough choices. I feel like
we have 17 items. Do we need to reread the list, do you think?
Sure.
Okay.
Here's what we got at the moment. Modular power supplies, build-friendly cases, USB, quiet operation. Everything but the computer, which I think we need to rephrase.
That's the one that's like, hey, if stuff breaks, you can find out information and
resources about the computer that exist outside of the computer itself, basically. Yeah. Being able to plug your PC into your TV, that's kind of the standardization of HDMI all over the place.
Yeah.
SATA, PCI Express, UEFI, and the UEFI boot shell.
We haven't talked about that one yet. We haven't talked about SATA, PCI Express, or UEFI yet.
Yeah. Modern BIOS. So support for input devices, network support, backing up firmware, etc.
Can we talk about this for a sec?
Yeah, sure. Like BIOSes have slowly been getting, or UEFI, whatever you call it these days, like slowly been getting more features over the years. Like I think the biggest one here, well, there's two. Excuse me. Like at some point they got support for mice and like USB keyboards and other types of keyboards. You know what I mean? Like
that first was mostly in the UEFI shift, is my understanding.
So like the first time I went into a BIOS menu and realized I could use the mouse was like shocking.
Yeah.
To the extent that I refused to do it. I was like, this is the BIOS. The mouse doesn't work here. I'm going to keep using the keyboard. What are you talking about?
Do you feel like the UEFI mouse access is better than just using the keyboard?
I mean, I prefer the key. But is that a legacy thing? Is it because I'm one of the crotchety old graybeards that?
Well, for me, it's that the
kids
people,
and your mice and your BIOS.
For me, it's the people who are designing the BIOS usually are pretty shitty UX designers.
Fair. That is very fair. Yes, actually.
So like even basic stuff like the click targets for the mouse being fat enough for you to be able to hit. Yeah. Or like the sensitivity setting for the mouse being humane.
Like it won't be like, there won't be like any kind of weird, or there won't be any kind of mouse acceleration or the things you're used to from Windows. Like it feels bad to use.
Wait, you leave mouse acceleration on?
Maybe not. I don't know. I forget.
Okay. So anyway, I feel like this is a real mixed bag. Like adding mouse support. The one thing in this list that I think is fantastic is the backup firmware.
Yes.
Like so if you have a BIOS flash go bad.
So there's two there, I think. Yeah. I think that because there are now, I guess probably every BIOS has had this for a while. You can back up the last known good settings. And then more recently, like there's basically like BIOS protection, right? There's like kind of a rescue mode sort of situation where if a flash goes bad, you have not destroyed your motherboard. You kind of just can recover from it.
Yeah, I assume this is a situation that's like Apple making phones waterproof because people keep dropping them in the toilets. Like that's the number one thing they do to destroy their phone. So I think Like I'm okay keeping backup firmware on here. I have never used network access on the BIOS at all.
you were like scandalized when I mentioned it before we started recording that it even exists.
Why talk about high risk, man.
The ASUS board that is in my NAS can connect to the internet and download firmware updates from the internet and install them like that.
They were so busy trying to figure out if they could do it that they didn't stop to think if they should do it, Brad.
I don't think I've ever actually let it happen. I think I downloaded one just to see it work. I was like, wow, that's crazy that the BIOS itself can just get on the internet now. But I didn't actually install it once it downloaded, but I did test it.
I think that's a high, like if you want to do something high risk, just go out and lick some subway turnstiles or something. Don't download a BIOS from the BIOS. That's madness.
If you combine the online firmware download with the firmware recovery kind of backup thing, then what can go wrong?
It's better to not need the firmware backup recovery, but have it just in case.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
The one thing I have stopped using boot disks to install firmwares because most motherboards don't really let you do that anymore. And I have started plugging in a FAT32 formatted USB stick with the BIOS on it to do the flash now. But I don't even use the Windows flash utility for BIOSes. That scares me.
I would never do that. That seems unnatural to me.
Yeah.
I guess maybe we should talk about the UEFI boot shell stuff at the same time. Like, I mean, I will fess up here. I don't know the difference really between like BIOS and UEFI operation.
Oh, so the big thing is the UEFI boots faster because it only boots the stuff that you absolutely need.
Interesting.
And the BIOS was limited to like some incredibly small amount of space and RAM. And the UEFI accesses the full 32 or maybe even 64-bit addressable space.
Interesting.
So it can hit things like larger file, like it can access a FAT32. It has enough memory to run the stuff that lets it access FAT32, or I think even NTFS now.
Okay.
I don't like it is good. UEFI at the beginning was such a pain in the ass to make work right that I would have put it as a negative if you'd asked me this like 8 years ago.
Sure.
And now, because like for a while you had this weird situation where if you like didn't install Windows with a UEFI formatted thumb drive, then it wouldn't use the UEFI BIOS and would roll back over to MBR and normal BIOS. I think it's fine. I don't know that I care enough to put on the list. I think the backup firmware is probably more important than the UEFI boot shell.
I mean, I put the boot shell on there because I mean it is basically sort of a DOS-ish prompt. That is useful for certain things. Like that's what I had to use to flash my SAS card for my NAS to put a different BIOS on there.
Okay.
You had to boot into the UEFI shell and flash it from there. So it's kind of, so that basically takes the place of a DOS boot disk these days.
Yeah.
Like you're just booting straight out of the BIOS to do some stuff like that.
Who makes that? Is it like AMI writes those or something?
Makes what?
Who writes the boot shell? Who owns that?
I don't know. Because you need to download a shell in a lot of cases. Like I think they're generally like .efi files. Like you're booting. That's what you're booting.
Yeah.
In fact, like I set up a Linux VM over the weekend, and like you can straight up go into /boot, and there's like there's the EFI file that it boots from. I don't know. Maybe I feel like our confusion around all this is probably enough of an argument to take it off.
Well, I mean, look, there's an argument for having more capable technologies there, and the fact that we're out of the teething window where like you had to assume that people didn't necessarily have that has changed things. Also, the fact that it's like the fact that I haven't accidentally installed the wrong version of Windows in a long time is telling.
Yes.
But yeah, I think you could also roll that stuff up into modern BIOS because UEFI BIOS same for all intents and purposes the same thing.
Sure.
Bootable USB OS installers are huge though.
Dude, I think that is a lock for the top 10.
Yeah, I would give that a lock. Probably
like the first time I guess it was probably Windows 7 if I had to guess. Maybe they did it with XP. But the first time I could go to Microsoft and they themselves sanctioned me to download a copy of Windows.
Like that's Windows installer, Windows 7 or Windows 8. I can't remember.
Like by their own good graces, they allowed me to download Windows. Prepare a bootable USB stick, put the installer on there, or it's all one tool. It's like you download the media creation tool and it just does it. But the point is, you didn't have to go to a store to buy it on a CD. You didn't have to like X, Y, or Z. You just straight up download the OS, put it on a thing, boot from that thing, and install it. That's it. Like you don't have to.
if your drive controller wasn't supported by the OS out of the box, you didn't have to download F6 drivers to put them on a floppy disk.
I only had to do that once, and it frightened me. I was like, what have I bought?
Always.
It was definitely a life moment, like questioning my life choices of like, what did I buy that I have to hit F6 and then install additional drivers in the middle of the Windows process?
Well, like on the XP,
what have I done?
In the XP and before the Windows installer would check the network, if you had a motherboard that was newer, a motherboard chipset that was newer than the OS, you had to download the F6 drivers every time.
Yeah.
At Maximum PC, it was always F6 drivers.
Oh, sure. You guys were just every single time, right? The single biggest convenience factor of this is you didn't have to keep OS installation media around anymore. Like anytime you needed to reinstall or install something new, you just made it.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, like your Windows 98 install CD was like a hallowed, it was like the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene, like your disk was on like a pedestal.
Oh, yeah.
That no one could touch because you had to know where it was at all times.
And if you lost that thing and something went wrong and like Windows stopped booting for some reason, you were hosed.
Right. Like, so just being free of having to keep up with that and just being able to make an OS installer whenever is so huge for me.
Of course, if you didn't have some secondary computer or something, how would you do that, Brad?
True.
Think about it. That should be below that then, I think.
Actually, you know what? Like that's not a bad point. Like, did you know there's no way to make a Windows installer on a Mac?
Yeah.
No reasonable way. There's like workarounds, but it's like a 20-step process of like formatting an NTFS stick and downloading all these cab files and extracting things and putting them in the right place. And like, yeah,
it's easier to download a pirated VM, run the VM in your Mac machine, make the new installer from the pirated VM, and then
yes. That was always kind of weird to me. Why they wouldn't support that use case more? Because like, wouldn't you want to give people a pathway to get off of your competitor and onto your OS? Like, wouldn't it behoove them
why
to say
Microsoft do that?
Yeah, like why would Microsoft make a Mac version of the media creation tool?
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, why don't they let people on a Mac make a Windows installer? Because it implies that they're moving from their competitor to them.
I feel like the moment they did that, Apple would have stopped doing.
Yeah, you're right. The
dual boot thing.
Like I was thinking, like, legally they can't stop them from releasing that, but you're right. There's like relationships to maintain.
Yeah,
you don't want to step on toes too much. I get it.
Plus, theoretically, Microsoft probably thought that the Apple customer who was buying Windows was going to Best Buy to buy a boxed copy of Windows with the USB stick in it. Probably.
Sure.
What about Windows Update installing basic drivers?
Oh, that's good. That's a good one. I don't know. Like,
why don't we bundle that and auto updating drivers in drivers got easy? Because remember in the old days, if you didn't have the right drivers, then your computer would be jacked up and you wouldn't know, like weird shit would happen all the time. You just wouldn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Like it would reboot suddenly. You'd have spontaneous reboots or wouldn't be running fast in certain applications or whatever.
I
if you didn't
shocked.
install like chipset drivers.
I mean, I'm even shocked that Windows has like a version of the NVIDIA driver built into it now, like a fallback version, like, like not just a generic VGA driver that puts you in 640 by 480 every time you change to it.
Yeah.
Like even that is still shocking to me. Yeah, that's good. That whole, it's not having to fiddle with drivers as much.
Yeah.
Easy driver installation / updates.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Because like the Windows Update drivers will kind of get you in trouble sometimes if you're not careful.
That's what I was going to say, is that sometimes you don't want to use those versions.
Yeah. But at the same time, like they'll at least get you started. Like it's not like the old days where you could hose yourself, right?
Yes.
If you, for example, in my K6 example, if I had forgotten to get the drivers for the modem before I pulled the hard drive out and formatted it and put in the new computer, I wouldn't have had any way to get modem drivers.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah.
That strikes fear into my heart. Let's just move on from that.
No, it's scary. Not having to activate Windows is a big deal. Did you ever install Windows like 95, 98?
Oh yeah, of course. Many times. Many times.
So during that activation process in 95 OSR2, which is when they started it, you typed your key in and then you'd get like a 30-digit code and you had to call an 800 number with the 30-digit code and you'd read it to some guy on the other side of the world. And then he would read another 30-digit number back to you, and you would type that in because you didn't connect to the internet. They couldn't guarantee you were connected to the internet. And that was how you activated Windows then.
Wow. Only one time though, right? Not every time you installed?
Oh, every time you installed.
Oh, because they didn't have the Microsoft account system where they just authenticated once that way,
thing
right?
started with Windows 8. That didn't start even, that started like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
God, man, that is insane.
Yeah. So like when they switched over, and it wasn't until after XP that they switched over to letting you install and then bugging you about activating afterwards.
Right.
I think with Windows Vista, they didn't let you have the fancy transparent window edges if you didn't activate.
That sounds right. Yeah. Like they locked features out.
Yeah, they locked some features out.
No arrow? How will I get by?
How will I not see my windows? So yeah, like not having to activate Windows to install it is a huge deal.
So what is the situation now? You can just download Windows and kind of use it in perpetuity. Is that right?
So the last time I looked at this, which was a while ago, as long as you were on one of the insider wheels, either the beta test versions, basically, they kind of would let you use it without any problems, whether you were paying or not.
Is that just a basic situation of like the kind of user telemetry that you're generating for us is basically worth us letting you use it for free?
I think that's the logic behind that, but I'm not sure.
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if that's like kind of a cool trade or if it's like super skeezy or maybe both. I'm not sure.
I mean, I think that's better than somebody downloading a pirated version that's infected with a bunch of malware and shit.
Yeah, that's fair.
From Microsoft's standpoint.
That's fair.
Like probably they were like, what's the most value we can get out of these people who are going to steal the OS if we don't just let them have it?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good trade. You get, I think, 30 days to activate when you install now, if you haven't already. And if Windows looks at your computer and is like, oh, not enough has changed for us to recognize this hardware fingerprint as a different computer, it'll just activate silently in the background. You'll never know that anything's happened. If it needs you to provide feedback or something, sometimes it pops up and says, hey, we've noticed some hardware has changed. Is this the same computer? And you say yes, and then they just activate it. Sometimes you have to call them still and say, hey, or you go. The worst I've ever had to do is go through a web form that said, hey, and you say my motherboard died and they gave me a new motherboard, but otherwise it's just, the old computer is no longer being used.
Do you know what in their eyes delineates a new computer, quote unquote, these days? I've got this Windows 10 Pro key on this 5-year-old motherboard. Is it a new motherboard? Like,
it is.
When I upgrade, will that be, when I get a new CPU and motherboard, will that be enough for that license to not transfer over?
There is a threshold, but the license so far for me has always, I'm still using the initial Windows 10 Pro key that was generated when I put my Windows 8 key in the get a free Windows 10 key thing.
Right.
So when they started this with Windows XP, I think we talked about it at length at Maximum PC. We did a whole article about it. The gist was the machine generated a hash based on the hardware IDs that it can see, which is like network MAC, serial number of the GPU, all these different things that you can see, the hard drive serial number, the things that it can access. And when that hash changed substantially, it would prompt another activation call.
Interesting.
I don't know if they're still doing it the same way. It almost seems like as long as you're using Windows 10 and you're logged into the number of computers that you have a license for, they don't really care.
Okay.
But it's unclear. That's unclear.
Yeah, I guess I'll find out when I upgrade, but I was wondering if it's less like it's not that you can't transfer it, it's more you just can't be using it on more than one or two or whatever the number is.
I think if you go through the exercise of contacting them, they'll give you a pass for like a normal human upgrade cycle.
It's like, hey,
especially if you're decommissioning the old hardware.
It's like, hey, I'm not going to be running Windows on that old machine anymore. So
yeah,
I'm going to make a proposal here.
Okay, what you got?
That we try to whittle this down to 10 and then call it a week.
And rank them next week?
I think that's the way this is going to go. Or we could call it right now. We're at 15 right now.
I think we can get to 10.
Okay.
I think we can. Here's what I'm going to suggest.
Okay.
I think modern connectors, modern multi-purpose connectors, so SATA and PCIe go into one. Actually,
really? I don't know, man. IDE was such a pain in the ass.
Okay,
SATA, pretty big. Of course, even SATA is getting dated now, but like,
But moving from those big fat ribbon cables to SATA was a huge deal.
So the better power connector too, and getting off the Molex to those tiny little Those svelte little power connectors.
And not having to change the jumpers.
Yeah.
For, because you can only have 2 on each one. You had to specify which one was which. It wasn't determined by cable position.
Totally.
So like you drop one of those jumpers in the bottom of the case, you ruined your day.
Yep. I think SATA deserves its own place on here for sure. PCI Express, like that's pretty good too. There's a lot of PCI Express stuff these days.
Well, but more than that, there was a period of time when there were 3 different slots in your computer. You have an ISA slot, a PCI slot, and an AGP slot.
Yes.
And that was insane.
The argument I might make against PCI Express is how complicated it is in itself, because there's multiple versions. There's numbers of lanes you need to worry about. There's like looking at your specific motherboard to figure out which slots have how many lanes and which ones get disabled when you're using other slots. Like,
hey, Brad, I just found a great deal on this Sound Blaster AWE64. I'm going to order it. You want one too? Oh, yeah, sure.
Sure.
Oh, man, this is the ISA version. I don't have an ISA slot anymore. What am I going to do? Can I just get an adapter and plug it in my PCI slot? Nope.
I don't know.
Get wrecked, noob.
Yeah, I get it, but I don't know. I would argue that the internal confusion with PCI Express is kind of moderates how great it is. But it's cool that, you can get like... I've got a graphics card, a USB 3 expansion board with a bunch of ports on it, a capture card.
You can get external PCI Express.
Yeah, like I've got all those all in the same type of slot, Well, but then there's also like 1X, 4X, 8X. Is there an 8X connector?
Yeah, there's 8X. It's
8X
1X, 4X, 16X, and...
I'm talking about the physical connector. Bless you. I'm talking about the size of the connector. There's like the super tiny, the 1X that's like an inch wide or something like that.
I don't think anybody uses the 8X, but if you have an 8X card, I have a bunch of 4X cards, but I don't have a bunch of 8X cards, I don't think.
I'm not saying PCI Express does not make the top 10, but there are some downsides to figuring it out.
Okay.
Let's see. Gosh, I feel like
Can I make a counter proposal?
Sure.
What if we do a top 15?
Oh, boy. Okay, sure. Why not? It's our list. Who cares?
Yeah, there's nobody here to tell us no.
Stop us, cop.
Yeah. So, okay, what's our top 15 then?
Okay, here's the top 15. Modular
in no particular
power
order.
Yes, no particular order. Modular power supplies, build-friendly cases, USB, quiet operation, everything but the computer.
Like being able to look stuff up on your phone.
Yes, we will rename that. Being able to plug your PC into your TV, which I think is really HDMI.
Yeah, ubiquitous HDMI.
Yes, SATA, PCI Express, the modern BIOS, bootable USB OS installers, troubleshooting features directly on the motherboard. Now that I'm reading that one out loud, well, maybe you like it more than I do.
I think that one's real good. Just because you buy cheap motherboards doesn't mean that the people are wrong, Brad.
No. Now that I'm reading that out loud, I'm thinking, if this is a top 15, I wonder if there are others that I would have argued to keep. But...
Well, unfortunately, we deleted everything instead of moving it to a X list. I
can sit here and hit Control Y all day long. Or I'm sorry, Control Z.
Hold on. I think I can just go to the original version in the suggested in the compare documents. Yeah, let's just do that.
Okay. Troubleshooting.
Oh, nope, I can't do
this
that.
This is the 15 as it stands. I believe we will pick this up next week and see where we get with it.
Yeah, sleep on it a little bit.
Yes, troubleshooting features that are on the motherboard. Easy driver installation and updates. Not having to activate Windows to install it.
That one's really good.
Consolidation of external cards onto the motherboard, such as Ethernet, Wi-Fi, sound, and graphics, which we haven't really talked about a lot, but I feel like is way up there. And headlamps.
Headlamps are awesome, man.
See, I would have, if I'd known we were not going to whittle it down to 10, I might have kept something else over headlamps. I think,
look,
maybe by next week I should buy a headlamp and try it out, and then I will change my tune.
Yeah, imagine having a flashlight that you don't have to hold, Brad.
That does sound pretty good.
And then it just automatically is aimed wherever your eyeballs are looking.
I can thought exercise this one the number of times that I've had to like drag the PC into the room with the windows so I can see inside it better.
How many times have you held a flashlight in your mouth?
Or moved a lamp across the room? I get it. Okay. All right. Well, that's provisional, but we'll talk about it. We'll get
provisional.
It happened. I kind of wondered if it would happen, and sure enough, it happened, just like the ranking of Windows is. This is a two-parter now.
Oh, no.
I didn't know that this would go as long as it did.
Are we going to have to re-record the intro?
I don't know. I think it'll be fine.
People are going to be really upset when they're going to be looking at this. They're going to be looking like 10 minutes ago at the time code that's left. They're going to be like, wait, I don't think there's enough time for them to make this an ordered list. And I feel like I've been bait and switched here.
This is how you build engagement.
Man, I don't like engagement that much, I guess. But you know what? The Mr. Softy truck's outside. So it's time to go get us the first soft serve of the year. But it's also time to thank our patrons.
Yeah.
As always, thank you to all of the folks that support the Tech Pod on Patreon. If you want to find out how you can do that, you can go to patreon.com/TechPod, where you can get access to the fabulous Tech Pod Discord, where people talk about all sorts of interesting things like Brad's chair posts.
That's right.
Brad, I got a question for you. What standards body do you think designs the spec or designed probably 100 years ago, the spec for chair wheel dongles?
An evil standards body.
Because they're all the same.
Are they?
I mean, there's two different shaft sizes.
Do you really think it's like, are you actually embellishing? Do you really think it's 100 years old or even like close to that?
I bet it's 50 years old. I bet it was designed in the 40s when offices design was a thing.
I have bad news for you. The 40s was a lot longer than 50 years ago.
Well, okay, 60, 70, or 80.
Did you know what? Like, this is already a long episode. I should not digress too much, but did you see this notion on Twitter that was going around recently that like I saw it and I was like, yes, sure. I do the same thing, where people were talking about like, hey, in your mind, when you think of 20 years ago, do you think of the 80s?
90s.
Not the turn of the century?
I think of the 90s.
Not still. The 2000s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I still, this is what like a bunch of people were agreeing with. And I also agree with it. Like when you say 20 years ago, I think like mid 80s.
Yeah, no, I think about 1994 when I was in college.
Okay. So you're a little bit more current on that.
I'm 25 years instead of 20.
But not much, right?
Yeah.
But so yes, 1940 was a lot more than 50 years ago, but I get where you're coming from.
The thing, I did math when my daughter was born, and I was like, her relationship, my parents' relationship, my relationship with like the Beatles is going to be the same as her relationship with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and stuff like that.
If not
it's the
longer,
same time gap.
Well, okay, sure. I guess that's about the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
we shouldn't talk about this. This is depressing.
Yeah. But yeah, so on the TechPod Discord, you can talk about things like Brad's wheels. You can talk about things like mechanical keyboards, audio engineering, audiophile headphones. We have a wide variety of topics, and there's always interesting stuff happening in the general chat, including people talking about stuff like new SpaceX launches and all, whatever happens to be going on.
I randomly had a need to. We have like a music creation channel for people, basically musicians, and I had
audio engineering stuff.
We're totally, and I had a random need to talk to some people about mixing 5.1 audio.
Oh, really?
And sure enough, there are several people there who have plenty of experience with that.
That's amazing.
And it's so awesome to just be able to talk to people that know these subjects that are,
I love it.
Great. It's great.
So yeah, if you want to find out about that, you can go to patreon.com/techpod. That's patreon.com/techpod. As always, we don't take advertising on the show. So this is how we make money doing the podcast. This is why we're able to keep doing it. And if you would like to support us, you can there for as little as $2 a month. Yes. As always. Oh, sorry, Brad.
No, just agreeing with you.
Oh, I concur. As always, thank you to our executive producer tier patrons, including... Oh, no, it's clipping out. I can't see the side of the thing.
Oh, no, I got to stretch. I got to fill headlamps, huh? Boy, that sounds like a good idea. I should go find some headlamps. What you got? Including Cedric Katzenmacher, The Bunny Fiend, Jacob Chappell, David Allen, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. We appreciate you so much. Yes. And if you'd like to, like I said, if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/TechPod. Hey, also thanks to everybody who bought Girl Scout cookies for my daughter. We blew through all of her goals. Nice. They extended the cookie sales, so they're still available at cookies.content.town. That's right. But yeah, thanks everybody who bought them, and I hope you enjoy your Girl Scout cookies. We really appreciate it. Because that pays for Girl Scout activities all year, and that's fabulous. So I guess that's it for us this week, Brad. Yeah, that's right. We're leaving with some unfinished business, but we'll be back next week. Who would have thought starting with a list of 20 things would get us all the way down to, I think we started with a list of 30 things. We've cut them in half. I told you it would be rank. We might, I shouldn't have taken a shower this morning. We should get down to, maybe we should cut this next week. I don't know. Maybe we should keep cutting. I think we can get to 10. Hey, you know what? We make the rules. It's true. We are the law. Bye, everybody.